In Lesson 401, we will be reading and writing decimals. Please remember this is for your benefit to be writing this on your whiteboard. That is my expectation. And as you complete your journal pages, you will be taking pictures of them and uploading them to Schoology. So please make sure you are doing your job. Go ahead and number 1 and 2. I'm going to have you go ahead and write 2 numbers. Write number 1 and 2. Please write those numbers as I read them. The first number is 59,846. 59,846. And number 2 is 37,124. 37,124. You should have those written on your whiteboard by now. Remember, be a person of integrity. Be trusted even when someone's not watching you. All right, so for number 1, you should have written 59,000. Remember, when you hear the word thousand or 100,000, that's where you're going to see your comma. 846. And number 2, 37,124. In number 1, I would like you to circle the tens place. Circle the tens place. And you can go ahead and do that for number 2. And then I would like you to underline the thousands place. So we're just dealing with whole numbers right now. So go ahead and circle the tens place and underline the thousands place. So in number 1, the tens place is the 4, the 2, and the thousand place, the 9 and the 7. Go ahead and erase your whiteboard. And you are going to write 2 more numbers. So number 1 and number 2. The first number I want you to write is 63,726. 63,726 and 700,056. Number 2, 700,056. So the first one was 63,726, and number 2 is 700. There's more my thousand, my comma comes in, 56. You need to have that 0 there in order for that place value to be held. So for number 1, I would like you to circle the number in the 10,000s and underline the number in the hundreds. For number 2, I'd like you to circle the number in the 100,000s and underline the number in the ones place. So for number 1, the 10,000s place is the 6, the hundreds is the 7. The 7 is in the 100,000s and the 6 is in the ones. When I take a look at a whole number, the number 8,888, as I move to the left, this 8 is 10 times greater. This one is worth 8. This one was worth 80. If I move to the left again, it's 10 times greater. This one is worth 800. The 8 in this next place is 10 times greater than the hundreds. It's worth 8,000. The same can be said in the reverse direction. If I move to the right, instead of being 10 times greater, it's 1/10. This is 1/10 the size. This is 1/10 the size, or divided by 10. if we take that same concept and we say, okay, what happens when a number isn't a whole number and we need to represent something in between, let's say the whole number 100 and 101, for example, $100.27. Remember, as we move to the left, it becomes 1/10. We divide it into 10 equal parts. So when we move from hundreds to tens, we break that 100 into 10 equal parts. When we move from tens to ones, we divide that by 10. The decimal point here, we say the word and. Now imagine taking that 1 and dividing it into 10 equal parts. That would be pretty small. Now take that and divide it into 10 more parts. And then take that 100 and divide it into just a sliver, and you get thousandths. We add a THS on the end to let us know that we're talking about decimals. So we're going to read and write decimals today. Here we have 3/10, and we read that as 3/10. Here we have 4/100ths, and here we have 5/1000ths. So the number before the decimal place is called the ones, you know that. The first place after the decimal is called the tenths. The next place is called the hundredths. Here my TH on the end. And the third place is the thousandths. So we will work on numbers to the thousandth place. So we just finished Unit 3, which was all about fractions. And fractions and decimals are related. We can take a decimal and write it as a fraction. So on your whiteboard, I'm going to ask you to number 1 to 6. You are given the decimal. You will write it as a fraction. So 3/10. On your whiteboard, please write 3/10. Next one, number 2, 82/100ths. You should be able to write that as a fraction. Do this with me, don't just watch it. Number 3, 914 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. It ends in the thousands place. So our denominator will be 1,000. When you see that there is a number in the ones place or any number before the decimal, it's going to be a mixed number. So I'll show you the first one, and I'll have you do the last two on your own. So this one would be read, number 4 would be read 5 and 86/100ths. We don't say decimal point. When we see that decimal point, we say the word and. So we would say 5 and 86/100ths. So it is a mixed number. Would you go ahead and write number 5 and 6 as a mixed number? Pause your video. Number 5, 2, be careful with this one, and 6, we just leave that 0 off, and this ends in the tenths, hundredths place. And number 6 is 5 and 804 tenths, hundredths, thousandths place is where that number ends. So our denominator is 1,000. Let's go ahead and move into our journal, and we'll be on page 112. Remember, you'll be taking a picture of this and make sure that you are completing it in the video as you are watching. So on page 112, it will show you that any of the large blocks is worth 1 whole. The longs are worth tenths. The squares are worth hundredths, and the little sliver is worth thousandths. I will write a number over on the side, and I want you to write it inside of your math journal. So would you go ahead and write 345 thousandths? Notice there's nothing before the decimal, 345,000. So you can write 0 if you'd like to there. 345 thousandths. So this would be 3 longs, 4 cubes, and 5 little slivers that make up the thousandths. Okay, let me give you another one. I would like you to write 1 and 78 thousandths. Would you please write that on journal page 112? 1 and 78 thousandths. So 1 whole, no longs, 78 thousandths. All right, the next one. I would like you to write 5 and 16 hundredths. 5 and 16 hundredths. 5 and 16 hundredths. Next one, I would like you to write 8 tenths. 8 tenths. 8 tenths. So wherever the number ends is the place value that you say. All right, next one. 2 and, notice I'm saying an and, 307 thousandths. 2 and 307 thousandths. 2 and, there's where my and comes in, 307 thousandths. Write it before I do. Would you write 4 and 8 tenths? 4 and 8 tenths. 4 and 8 tenths. And let's just do one more on this page. 408 thousandths. Would you please write 408 thousandths? Moving on to journal page 113, it says write the following decimal in words. Use the place value chart on journal page 112 to help you. So we would read the first one as 60, 7, and it ends in the hundredths. First place after the decimal is tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. Remember to write this with me. Next one is 3, and we use the word and when we see the decimal point. 8, and that number ends in this place value right here in 8 tenths. Number 3 is 3 and 600. We just read that number as a 3-digit number. I would say 622, and it's not until we write the whole number that we write where it ends, and it ends in the thousandths. Need that THS on the end. 3 and 622 thousandths. All right, we'll skip number 4. Remember, at any point in time, if I'm going too quickly, you can pause the video. Numbers 5 through 8 say write each decimal using numerals. record them on the place value chart on page 112. We won't do that. We'll just write them, then write the value of the 4 in each decimal. So number 5 is 4 8/10. Remember, anytime I hear the word and, I'm going to put a decimal. 4 8/10. The 4 is worth 4, or 4 ones. Either way to say that. That's worth 4. Number 6, 48 hundredths. 48 hundredths is going to end 2 places after the decimal. 48 hundredths. And the 4 is worth, we can say it this way, 4/10 or 4/10. Number 7, 48 thousandths. Now I'm going to have to use a 0 because it needs to end 3 places after the decimal. So in order to make that work, I have to put a 0 in the tenths. And the 4 is worth 4 hundredths. Or I could write it out 4 hundredths. Either way is correct. Number 8, 6 408 thousandths. So 6, I see the word and, so I put a decimal point. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. 408 thousandths. And the 4, go to the next page. The 4 is worth 4/10. 4/10. Number 9, 10 and 11. We're rewriting each decimal as a fraction. So just read it out loud as I read it so you get used to saying it. So number 9 says 6/10. Say it. Write it as a fraction. Number 10 says 300ths. Say it. 300ths. 300ths. Here's tenths, hundredths, thousandths. That one's read 8 thousandths. Say it. Let's write it 8 thousandths. Now we will take each of the fractions and write them as a decimal. So 2/10, again, remember, tenths is the first place after the decimal, hundredths, and third place is thousandths. So 2/10, the 2 has to end in the place right after the decimal. Number 13 is read 65 thousandths. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. My number has to end in the thousandths. In order for the 65 to end in the thousandths, I have to put a 0 in the tenths place. Number 14, 402 thousandths. Number 15, use the clues to write the mystery number. Remember, this is the ones, the tenths, the hundredths, the thousandths. So write a 5 in the tenths place, a 6 in the ones place, a 2 in the thousands place, and a 1 in the hundredths. How would we read that number? We would read that number 6 512 thousandths. Try it. Number 16 is cut off a little bit, but you have your math journal there so you can read it. It says, make the following changes to the number 7 849 thousandths. Make the 7 worth 1/10 as much. So we're going to move that 1 place to the right. So the 7 has to go there. Make the 8 worth 10 times as much. So we're going to move it 1 place to the left. So it's here. We're going to move it 1 place to the left. make the 4 worth 1/10 as much. So we're going to move it one place to the right to make it smaller. And make the 9 10 times as much. So we're going to move it to the left. So what is our new number? It would be read 8 and 794 thousandths.